Starting a new finance leadership role or starting with a new client as a fractional is one of those risk points in your career. Not because you're incapable, but because expectations are often unclear. Timeframes can be unrealistic, and you're expected to add value before you have full context. And this is especially true with startups and scale-ups, particularly with a first-time founder. So you might be the first senior finance hire, you might be stepping up from, say, a finance manager to a leadership role, or you might be moving into a CFO or fractional CFO role earlier than planned. And in all these cases, the first 90 days in this role matter more than any other period. It shapes how the founder sees you, what you get trusted with, and whether you're positioned as a leader or just a firefighter. So you do want to start in a new role with a good 90-day plan that is not just a list of tasks, but rather to help you be a leader. So I wanted to go through today what I believe every finance professional should include in their 90-day plan when they're starting in a new role based on what actually works in fast growth environments. Hi, my name's Alysha Randall. I'm a fractional CFO and I also train new and aspiring CFOs in startups and scale-ups. I wrote a book called Financial Leadership Fundamentals that tackles this exact topic, and I do a video every week. So if this sounds interesting to you, then please do click on the subscribe button below. So the first thing I wanted to say is you may want to start with the outcomes rather than the activity. So a mistake that can be made is that the 90-day plan is full of actions rather than thinking about the outcomes of our actions and what they are supposed to achieve. So before you think about deliverables, you may want to be clear on what success looks like after the first 90 days. So for example, a successful 90-day plan might be that the founder trusts your numbers, that the cash flow visibility is clearer than it was before you joined, the reporting is consistent and understood, maybe even key risks are surfaced, and you are seen as someone who really brings structure and calm to the finance function. So these outcomes really should anchor everything else in your plan. And if an activity does not move you closer to one of these ideal outcomes, then it might not be worthwhile including. So here are things that I consider and what we often do when we start with a client. So the first 30 days, you want to understand before you fix anything. So the first 30 days are really about learning, not proving yourself. So this is where, sometimes finance professionals want to overcorrect and feel the pressure that they need to add value quickly or start changing things before they fully understand the business. And I can tell you right now that this really backfires, particularly if the foundations and the baseline of the business aren't working. So your focus in the first month should be understanding the business model. So you need to know how the business actually makes money, not how it's necessarily described in the pitch deck, but what really drives revenue, what drives costs, where cash really leaks, and what assumptions the founder is relying on. So if you don't understand this, then everything else can be quite cosmetic. The second thing is assessing the current finance foundation. So this is not judging what's already in existence, but it's about understanding what you're dealing with, basically. So you want to look at the bookkeeping quality, the month-end process, the reporting cadence, cash flow visibility, tools and tech stack, and who owns what. So you're basically building a mental map of what exists and where the real risks are. So essentially, you're doing an internal audit, and it's one of the key things that I discuss in the book as well, that you really do want to understand the law of the land first. Where are the skeletons, essentially? And number three is building relationships and trust. So your influence later really depends on the trust that you build early on. So you want to spend time with the founder, with the key operational leads, and anyone that touches the numbers basically. And you're there to ask questions, to listen carefully, really avoid criticism. You're just gathering context. And so your output at the end of the 30 days really should be a clear assessment rather than a long to-do list. But this early stage, particularly with building the relationships, it's the start of building those business partnerships that are really crucial being a leader. If you want to learn more about business partnerships, I do a video on that exact topic and I'll leave a link for that above. Day 31 to 60, this is when you want to stabilize and maybe create an early win. So the second 30 days is about creating credibility, but really stability. And at this stage, people might want to see some movement, but the key is to choose what the right movement is. So the first one is to fix what is blocking decision making. So you absolutely can't fix everything. You want to focus on what is preventing the business to make the right decisions now. So that might be unreliable cash flow forecasting, confusing or inconsistent reporting, not understanding what runway is, or just not a visibility on the key costs. So these are examples of high impact areas that really demonstrate your leadership quickly. So choose one that you think is something that needs a focus on. Then you want to clarify what good looks like. So some founders, or many founders actually, have never worked with a senior finance leader before and they don't know what to expect. So you want to use this period to define what month end looks like, set expectations on timelines and quality, explain what finance can and cannot do. And by doing this, it kind of avoids that misalignment or misunderstanding or expectations later on. So it's best to kind of set the scene as early as possible. And then finally, you want to deliver one visible improvement. So early wins do matter, but they should be meaningful. So examples of something you could tackle would be, say, a clearer cash view, a simplified P&L, a cleaner reporting pack, or a short risk summary. And this shows that you're not just observing, but you are actually improving things thoughtfully. But again, I must stress, you only want to tackle one. You won't be able to do more than that. And then day 61 to 90, this is when you want to really position yourself as a leader. So the final 30 days are about shifting how you are perceived. So by now, you should really understand the business a bit, have delivered at least something tangible. And this is then when you step fully into a leadership role. So you may want to move from reporting into insights. You want to stop being the person who just produces numbers and you want to be the person that explains what is happening, why it's happening, what decisions need to be made. And this is then proving that finance becomes more of a strategic function rather than just compliance. Perhaps introduce forward-looking thinking. So in startups especially, looking backwards is not enough. It's the time to introduce the concept, at least, of scenarios. A few back of the envelope scenarios never goes to waste. Improving the forecasting discipline. So how do people interact with the forecast, if at all? Do they understand it? And then linking numbers to operational decisions. So making sure that the story and the understanding of what the numbers are trying to say and how you can take that information forward is really key as a finance leader. So even lightweight improvements here can change how finance is viewed. And then, of course, at the end of these 90 days, you basically want to set the roadmap for beyond the 90 days. So your 90-day plan should end with a clear view on what comes next. So perhaps not a massive transformation plan, but just clarity for the rest of the business, particularly the leadership team and the finance function. So for example, what needs to be fixed next? What can wait? Where investment is needed and where you need support. And this shows maturity and builds confidence in your leadership. I will say, as a side note, you want to make sure that this 90-day plan isn't just about the business. You also want to ask yourself, where do I need to build confidence? What skills do I need to develop to succeed here? And what support will I also need in this role once you've got a bit of an understanding of what the role entails? So make sure that you consider that as well, not just the business. So you do absolutely want to start a new leadership role with a 90-day plan. So a high level framework that I've just delivered in this video and in my blog post gives you a starting point, and then you can essentially fill in the gaps. You don't want to just start a role and just wait to be told what to do. That is not what a leader does. A leader comes in and creates the change, shapes the finance function, and really works collaborative with the rest of the business. And again, doesn't wait to be told what to do. That is very much the difference between a leader and a manager. So make sure that those first 90 days you're able to stick to a framework similar to this one, and then you'll really be perceived as a finance leader rather than just a finance manager who's firefighting all the time. If you want to be a confident finance leader in the next 12 months, then I've got a three-step plan for you as well. The first one is to subscribe to this channel so that you get insights such as today every single Thursday. The second one is take a look at the FLF book that I mentioned earlier. This book has actions at the end of every single chapter that you can implement in your role today, whether you're in a finance leadership role or not. And then finally, you might want to check out the FLF course where you can have Q&As with me to help you grow in your role. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. Good luck with your new role if it's about to happen. All the best, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers.